Um, so who wants to speak about that first?
All right,
Uh,
shall I kick off? Yep.
yes,
Well, we had
please.
um, a fretful time working up to the event because we had a complete block on any promotions until the local elections 2 weeks before the event. And so it was all a fairly nervy um, preparation. We had almost 30 contributors lined up and committed, but no one coming to see it 2 weeks before the event. But I'm pleased to say that in the end, we had a total of about 70 people, including the contributors, there on the day. Um, and really an excellent set of panels, which got discussions going. And the most important thing on these events is the connections that are made. So we focused quite a lot on energy, clean energy, and also uh, business decarbonisation. There were two of the key panels, and then had a number of workshops delving into 8 different subjects that people could go to 2 of the 8. So we kept people busy from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And I'm pleased to say that there were a couple of anecdotes. They're still dripping through. Um, but one was a chap who has developed an application for small businesses, for micro businesses in particular, so that they can uh, go in, find the activities that most relevant to their type of business. So, for example, a hairdresser could find out, yeah, 5 different ideas that they could do to reduce their emissions and their waste, um, and also put them in touch with other businesses in their area who are trying to do the same thing. And so it was a very good app and for uh, playing that through. But in the process of this, I found that the application developer for the SME Climate Hub, which is an international organization helping businesses to decarbonize, um, he happens to work in the very place we had the event. And so we were able to connect those two people. And they were very keen to meet and were talking a lot during the event, and I know we'll be talking afterwards. Another example is Luke Redbourne, who came from Zurich for the event, and who emailed me yesterday to say that he is now setting up a forum in Swindon to help companies to decarbonise. So they're just 2 examples of the conversations and the impetus that we managed to create during the event, that appear to be bearing fruit beyond the event, which for me is always what's most important. Julian, do you want to add anything?
I'm not sure there's much I can. So Luke, I mean, he was really good as well because being in the insurance industry, he knew about all the risks and he was able to sort of articulate those to the attendees, and that was really helpful. We had other people, including, for example, someone from the Woodland Trust who wanted to increase tree cover, and they got a project focusing on Swindon, which we didn't know about before, and that was great. I think, did you mention about the person trying to set up People Planet Pint in Swindon?
Yes, yes. Well, I mentioned him
Yeah.
in the context of the app. The same
Yeah.
person, as Julian
Okay.
mentions, is in the process setting People Planet Pint up in within Swindon.
Yeah, so we may have a few networking opportunities for businesses going on. I was just communicating with him today. I mean, there's a Old Town Business Association. He could, for example, have People Planet Pint sort of in the same venue after that, which might be quite a good way of sort of getting it off the ground. Um, so yeah, yeah, it was I thought it was a really helpful day in networking. It was all very, in the end, it all came together. It was good that there was an outdoor bit where we had pizza lunch and it was a nice day. So everyone was really getting together and sort of talking outside. The networking worked very well there. Um, I think a lesson learned is probably, if we want to capture a bit more of it, we need to sort that out a little bit better before. There are various areas where it was not quite clear whether it was us or the council going to do things, and various factors on these things. So we didn't actually get very good video coverage of it this year. But hopefully that's a learning point. And I mean, the thing you were going to say, William, I mean, there's a few other things like um, about the possibility of doing the same model in other places. I was quite pleasantly surprised how well this one worked in Swindon. Although we're half the size of sort of Wiltshire, I felt we still got, a really good critical mass of people there. And I think the same thing could probably work in places like, well, certainly Salisbury, but probably other towns around the county as well. You had was it we were talking about it with William? We had a list of other towns, or was it Andrew maybe was saying
I think
about
that was with Andrew. Yeah.
network? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, unless anyone else wants to raise a hand first, I want to react to that very positively. Um, Congratulations, 70 people after the PERDA period of not being able to do any publicity. That is fantastic, and especially because it seemed to be going on a very much smaller scale than our business day of the climate summit last June, um, which had what, 100 people?
Yeah, just over 100 in
Yes,
Trowbridge.
so not hugely less. Um, and so well done. And I know that the community day got got a rain check, didn't it? Let's put it that way, for various reasons. But reflecting, well, I'm really excited that those two developers got together with their apps. And did you say that someone came from Zurich and they're going to run a forum in Swindon? You didn't say
Well,
they were going to run a forum in
they're
Zurich.
going to attempt to set one up. I don't think they're yet they're quite there yet, but that is their intention. And
Right.
so, yeah, no, that's brilliant. And I
Yes.
think one thing I would say is, again, we have proved the benefit of cooperating with the council. It was quite tricky at times, but we we persisted, and I think that gave a lot more oomph to the event. Have both the Climate Alliance and the council together, and I'd recommend that if anybody is trying to, set up this sort of thing anywhere else in Wiltshire, that either the local council and or the local Chamber of Commerce or something like that is a necessary partner in order to recruit the right contributors and the attendees when it comes down to it. So it was frustrating, but also very helpful to work with the council.
I've just put a link in the chat to a news article which covers it really
That's
well.
great. And reflecting on that, networking seems to be something that's happened in common with the last June's Climate Summit Business Day and this Greener Swindon Business Day. Exceptional and surprising networking. So we ought to bear that in mind, that if you run a business day, you're likely to get more and better networking going on than you thought. For instance, in last June, Appetito and
And
Wood
serial partners.
And Cereal Partners, Appetito or Butcher Farm Foods, got together and started networking. Their premises are only a mile apart and they'd never met. I think that Volvo may have done some networking with businesses about their coming electric HGVs, which is really good news. And from what you say, these things it was humming there in Swindon.
Yeah, I think that these events work best when they are built around network. We promoted it as a day of practical conversations.
Great.
So it was very much you're coming to talk and to meet other people and discuss things, rather than you're coming to be talked to. And
Yes.
I think that the long-term impact, any impact beyond the day, is very much relates to the networking rather than any information that's transmitted during the day.
Yes. I think one thing we might want to try to do is, if two people start networking, we might want to try and insert ourselves and stay in the loop of those two, so that we can then still gather what's going on, what they're generating,
Well,
and
I
pass
will
that on
continue, and I
around the
know,
climate movement.
yeah, Julian will continue with Umesh, the developer, as I will, and with Zurich.
Great.
I've said, if I can be helpful, but we mustn't get in the way of relationships. We
True.
only go there if we're welcome.
Okay. And the next three largest settlements are Salisbury, Trowbridge, and Chippenham. Trowbridge Town Council is shaping up to be very interesting. Lots of Lib Dem and other councillors who are receptive to climate and want to be seen to be doing things. Quite a lot going on in their Green Week. And Chippenham, pretty switched on. Salisbury, someone can answer me that, whether they think they'd be able to get something together. You've got a fantastic transition town movement and so on, haven't you there? And then the next three on the list are Culm, Warminster, and Melksham. Melksham's got a big trading estate. Don't know about Culm and Warminster. And then we could move on down indefinitely down the list in terms of population. So any comments or questions so far? Mike, you must be pleased because the event that you helped us we ran with you in Swindon earlier about climate justice and indexes of deprivation was kind of in a way a taster for this thing, and I was really
It wasn't
pleased
referred to
that
explicitly.
happened.
It wasn't referred to explicitly, but it was very much in the talks of one of the sessions where we had a lot of speakers who were talking about the same ground, in particular the relationship between tree cover and social deprivation, economic deprivation, was talked about quite a lot.
I think
That's really important, isn't it?
Mike's
And
event
Julian's put a
also.
link in the chat. Was there
Sorry,
any
just
other
give-
cover in like Wiltshire Times? Okay, carry on, Mike. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to just chip in and say well done. It sounds like a fantastic event, and I think it's a really important way to challenge a lot of the negative narrative around net zero, etc. All these businesses who clearly know what they're talking about and are very enthusiastic and positive and grasping the opportunities. A really great contribution. If you can do it, if you can pull off something else, something like that elsewhere in Wiltshire in future, that would be brilliant. It's great to bring in some wider group of voices than we normally muster to speak in support of the climate and nature agenda.
Were there many councillors turning up?
We had a few, didn't? Sorry, Julian.
But the only one at the Green Business Day was Emma Bushell, the deputy leader, and that's because they had partly because they had their annual meeting on the same afternoon, and they hadn't sorted themselves out as to who was doing what yet. I was also going to say that Mike's event will feed more into the community day, which we've now scheduled for autumn. Hopefully early autumn, the first half of autumn, because it wasn't possible to really do that justice within the constraints of working with the council and the times of the election and things.
Okay, now you've just put a link in the chat to the Wiltshire Climate Alliance page on the Green Business Day, and I see the links to the speakers are hyperlinks, so we can find them on LinkedIn and so on. Are there any videos of any workshops or anything? Any resources live from the day?
There are some, and you can ask for them, but we haven't published them yet because they're not sufficient quality, and we need to sort of sort them out a little bit.
Thanks very much. So, any other questions or comments? Does this inspire anyone, for instance, to say, "Oh, well, a business day is going to be good where I live," because to me it seems that one of the things it can do is tell councils and the business community that there are green businesses out there doing things, doing them successfully. It's not just a load of waffle from Ed Miliband. Oh, businesses love net zero action. It is really happening. It's happening where you live or where you work, and I think that's useful to know. Okay. Otherwise, we can crack on to the National Emergency Briefing. If you've got anything else on Business Day that occurs to you just too late, just pop us something in the chat and we can jump back. But National Emergency Briefing, and in the agenda, we've said People's Emergency Briefing. There have already been 6 briefings in the county, or screenings, okay, with another 10 planned that we know of so far. And there's a web page on our website. We want to be able to learn from experience of, and I think by the way, I'm seeing a lot of lag on my own picture on the Zoom, so I think that might be an Andrew's Wi-Fi problem or an Andrew's internet problem. Sorry about that. I'll try and speak closely, but perhaps it's everyone. So some of you have had screenings. I'm eager to know how it went, particularly the who attended and who didn't. Was it all members of your local climate group and the Green Party, or did all your councillors turn up? And how about the discussion afterwards? And how satisfying was that? And how did that go? So, is any of you willing to speak to that at all? Kate, for instance, to name but one. Thanks, Kate.
Do you mean this Kate, Andrew?
Yes, sorry,
Okay.
Kate Nottage.
So Kate
From
Nottage,
Bradford on Avon.
I was at the emergency briefing in Bradford on Avon, and after the screening, so the chap who managed the whole event, Nick Astley, or was that a pop singer? Anyway.
Nick Aslett, yes?
Aslett, that's it, Nick Aslett. He managed it very well. And after the screening of the film, we had a pause to kind of absorb the shock and get together with our own feelings in ourselves. And then we went on to distribute cards, like file index cards, on which people could put their comments either during discussion or at the end of the group discussion. People turned their chairs round so that instead of being an auditorium where they were all facing the screen, they turned their chairs round, and we had groups of about 6 people at a time. The attendance was, I gather, 70 people, something like that, which is not too bad. And they wrote their comments on the cards and then handed them in. And one of our coordinators, Jill Johns, has made a summary of all the comments. It's 3 sides of A4. And our MP was present, Brian Matthew. So the comments have been sent to him. He asked to see them, and they've been sent to him. He has been to several screenings across his constituency, which is Melksham and Devizes. It's hard to summarize all the comments on 3 pages of A4, but I think it was a worthwhile exercise. Nick's main driver in the event was to get people to sign the petition imploring the government to have a national screening of the national emergency briefing. And I don't know what the response to that was, because each individual will have sent that in. So we don't have a data feedback on that as far as I know. And I haven't looked up the response to the petition so far. Brian Matthew is in support of the petition. I think with media today, I personally think it's actually quite difficult to get the audience's attention on something which they kind of know before they switch on is not going to be good news. So one thing that came across in the feedback was, please, can you give us examples of good practice? We would like to learn from people who have experience of reducing their carbon footprint or enhancing nature or any of the other targets. How did they do it, and how can we do it? So that's one of the things that came through. So I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Thank you. Jill, you've got a hand up. Hazel, I've noted your hand as well.
Can I just mention that, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right.
Just
It was a
quick one,
very,
Hazel. Okay.
it was a very interesting meeting, actually. Thankfully to Nick Aslett, who I saw on the Saturday before, mentioning me about it. I do appreciate him. It's the first time I've ever met him, and it was at the Quaker House when he was actually bringing together another group of people. Then he mentioned this meeting, and I was able to, in both cases, bring my husband along as well. So it was lovely to get him involved as well on that sort of thing. So it was very open to the public. And may I mention that I thought the MP Brian Matthew was very interesting afterwards, and the actual song which I printed and sent to many, many friends that he mentioned was Woodstock by Joni Mitchell. And she turns out to be a friend of ours over in the States. And it was written at the time when my husband and I were living for at least a year in the States then. And we knew what was going on. And it was just, I thought, so apt from Brian Matthews to even bring that up. And then afterwards, for us to all to get into groups afterwards and experience other people's feelings is very much more bringing it home to us. I mean, this is something that we have known for years and years. And, almost I was raised with it. I was even 1967 when I was out in the States as well, like that. It's something that I thought, thankfully to Nick Aslett for introducing me. And I love the way he calls himself a conscientious protector. I thought that was lovely, protector. That's superb. And yesterday, I just want to mention, I met a friend over in Bristol. He's not in a good way at the moment. He's in his 80s, but came across one of his writings, and it was called King Iggy and the City of Rubbish. And it was written in 1994. It's a most amazing children's story. And I think if we can pass the word out to children, and he talked about the somebodies and the nobodies. And this is exactly what's going on at the moment, politics and everything. So, but if you do read that Woodstock, it's an amazing ending to it. So sorry about that, but it was, thank you very much for a very good meeting. And I was able to sign lots of the petitions as well afterwards and during it. And my husband as well. I got him going. Thank you.
Hazel, thank you very much for coming to the screening then, and thank you very much for such a personal reaction to it. You've really opened up to us. I've got hands up, and Jill was actually going to be speaking next. You took your hand down and put it up again. Shall we take Jill first? And I see Shirley and Kate. If
Yes,
that's all right.
I went to the briefing in Salisbury yesterday, and I did feel it was overwhelmingly the usual suspects who were in the audience rather than anybody who didn't know what the national emergency briefing was all about and needed to know. The format seemed to be the same as Kate described, but we didn't have any group discussions afterwards. There was someone with a roving mic who took comments from the audience. Unsurprisingly, our MP was not there, and he didn't go to the national emergency briefing either, apparently. And again, one member of the audience did urge us to go and sign the petition, which I see that Richard's put in the chat, has about 19,000 signatures so far, and we need 100,000 to get parliamentary debate.
Thank you. Thanks, Jill. The MP being, is that Danny?
John.
Sorry, John.
Good, John Glenn.
John Glenn, Conservative, Salisbury. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Not Danny Kruger then. Okay. Shirley, you've been waiting.
Yes, I was I was very thankful for WCA because we were booked to have 3 facilitators through WCA. I felt that some of the directions from the centre were a little bit, to be frank, a little bit precious and also a little bit too prescriptive. So I felt very maverick, but sort of put my own mark on it and said, right, we're having just round tables of 8 to 10 for the discussion afterwards with a facilitator on each table, and those facilitators will feedback. We'll then have some record of that, and then that can be sent on to further the effort. I did say anybody who wanted downtime, come in the bar and I'll be there if you want, quiet reflection. But nobody did take up that option. The facilities manager from the town council was meant to put out the QR code sheets and forgot to. So that went by the board. And in the comments today at NEB debrief, I understand that most people felt that the QR code work was intrusive and really not very practical if you're trying to engage people in the moment on the spot. Which is rather an interesting reflection. I had to, because poor old Julian, this is quite ironic, didn't make it because of train problems to do a facilitation. I filled in and was pleasantly surprised by the level of knowledge on the table I was doing. And I think there will be some benefits in terms of enhanced membership of Melksham Environment Group. I made it quite clear that there were already existing quite a lot of vehicles in the town for eco efforts, and that really we did not have the resource to divert into specialist channel for NEB and onwards. It had to be part of what we are all already doing. That again, and then finally, Brian was given the opportunity to respond to the feedback from the facilitators. And he, as somebody else has said, would like to have the outflow from the whole evening. But I was very thankful that all the tech side was done by Melksham Town Council officers. And I was very pleased we got about 40 people there, but that included 7 MEG members and 2 staff of the MP and the MP, so 30. But for Melksham and a rather unpracticed publicity effort, I was quite relieved, actually. And as I say, quite pleased with some ideas that came out of the groups.
That's really informative. Thanks, Shirley. Lots to note there. And so thank you for that. And I'm glad it went well enough. Poor old Brian, he's seen that film so many times. Now, Kate from Chippenham, without more ado.
Hi, everyone. So first of all, thank you. That's really interesting to hear from other people's experiences. So I'm in the process of arranging for it to be shown at Chippenham Environmental Forum. And the idea is then that the forum, which includes various different groups and businesses and organisations, we talk about how to take it to the next stage, which is putting on a public one. So I've been asking lots of people about their experiences, including at, you may or may not know that there is a meeting in the Southwest amongst council officers all about the climate. So I was finding out people's experiences from that, and they actually had a speaker from the National Emergency Briefing, Ben. So there's some interesting things that was mentioned. So one of them was the difficulty in attracting people beyond the usual suspects. I completely know what you mean. It's great that, they're there, but obviously we all want to reach a wide audience. So one of the key ways to do this, apparently, is, as one of the asks, not only to do a public screening, but to actually look at how whoever is there can do a screening within their networks. So it might be, and this was something we were talking about, there are several councils that have done a staff-only briefing. And I think that does bring a lot of value to have that internal discussion. So it might be businesses. Maybe you're a member of a church group, a women's institute, a gardening group. So it's for you then almost to kind of champion it amongst the people that you know, and hopefully, you know, you're someone that they know and trust, and they'll be more likely to come along with. Interestingly, Ben said that they found overall 86% of people who see a screening go away feeling challenged, but more motivated to act. Of all the councils, only one had some naysayers, because, you know, this obviously is a concern, but you have people turn up and you have to kind of, you know, argue about it. But only one out of, I think, out of maybe 50 different councils. And the advice there from Ben was to keep it personal rather than big questions like, oh, well, what's the point of us doing anything? China's bigger, you know the arguments. The other thing which people might not be aware of, they do national emergency briefing, they do offer facilitator training, which has been designed by the Climate Psychology Alliance, I think it is. So that if you want some support, if you're going to be a facilitator, to understand it all. And what I thought was really interesting was, so some places had done an expert panel, and I know one of the comments was they wanted to know what was going on. So some places have found that when they have an expert panel and they're saying what they're doing in the local area, then people who've been there in the audience kind of go away thinking, oh, there's lots of stuff to be done, so we don't need to do anything. So just something to kind of bear in mind, I guess. It's a bit of a hard balance, isn't it?
Sorry, you're on mute, Andrew.
Beg your pardon. I'm glad that Kate reminded us about the facilitator training. And I, for one, didn't know about the Southwest Council's sort of climate forum. That's really interesting to know about.
Sorry, I just remembered one more thing. Sorry.
Go on.
I've been working with WELC, which you may know is the Wiltshire Association of Local Councils, to set up a local network for council officers and councillors in Wiltshire. We're having trouble getting representatives from Wiltshire Council, but we've had a couple of meetings. So just to say that at our next one, we'll be talking about the briefing, because we want to try and encourage local councils to be involved as well. And Jackie, I think you're coming along to talk about the experience as well. And I've also been in contact with the climate officer for the Bristol Diocese, so that's Church of England's over this region. So they have put together some kits, some kind of like resources. I know the actual climate officer for the church, he's been to 30 screenings, 30. And for example, in my my environmental group, this is not work now. In my own environmental group, we've worked with our local church to put on a screening there, so that's also an option. And I think that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Great. And while I remember it, although I don't think I'm going to be going to my other event, Paul Sample, who's Wiltshire Council's cabinet member for climate himself, has asked the chief executive, Lucy Townsend, to put on a screening in County Hall. And last time I went to a meeting, he hadn't got any action at all. So I deliberately asked a public question about it in the full council meeting, just to sort of give him support, so that the officers realise that that we know they're supposed to do it. But any other support you can give by asking your councillor to badger Paul Sample, he can then pass that on to the officers, or any other way of encouraging Wiltshire Council to have a screening for their own people, I guess, councillors, council officers at County Hall. That would be great. Also, I've been asked twice, because I'm chair, I've been asked if I can go to a screening in Trowbridge, which I don't necessarily think I can. I've been asked if I can kind of represent Wiltshire Climate Alliance at an invitation-only screening in Salisbury on the 11th of June at the Guildhall. I don't think I can. So if any of you can put yourselves forward to just be there and kind of nominally represent Wiltshire Climate Alliance. I've been told in both cases that it won't be a matter of being a panel speaker, but just being there. That would be really, really helpful, so that I don't end up rushing around the county or just letting them down, full stop. So Julian has a hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to give a bit of feedback on the Swindon event and say a couple of those points that were made. Our main one that's happened to date has been a church run and a big central Swindon church, and that was a really good venue for it. It gives it some sort of sense of gravitas, I guess, and another couple of churches are wanting to do it now too, which is really great. People very often are more keen to do it after they've seen it once, so that works really well. One of the interesting things we discovered is that the Catholic Church has a slightly different organisation to the sort of eco-church network. They have their own sort of version of it, and I'm still trying to understand that a little bit more. If anyone sort of knows about what's happening in the Catholic Church side of things, I'd be very interested to hear, because I'd like to engage those in Swindon as well. Someone mentioned about the usual suspects. That came up at today's meeting with the authors of the NEB thing, and that's perfectly okay for the beginning, and they've got a sort of a second main ask, as well as signing the petition, which is getting other people to do the screening. So I mean, they're really pleased that the fact that the screenings now there's a sort of exponential curve of screenings, and the more people go that screenings and organise additional ones, the more that'll get to everyone. And they pointed out that if it carried on the way it was, it would get to more people than there are population in the country before the end of the year. Obviously it won't carry on like that indefinitely, but it's really important that is one of the other things, that some of the people that go to a screening are motivated to do another one. And the final point I was going to make was that one of the other main sort of objectives is to engage decision makers, whether that's in business or councils or the MP, of course. In order to get the MP there, one of the main things that people forget is you have to actually organise the time around the screening around when the MP can make it. It's no good putting on a screen, inviting them, and then being upset that they don't turn up. They have really busy schedules. They're in London generally Monday to Thursday. But you also need to actually make contact with their local office, ring them up, and check which weekends they're going to be available, or whenever they can do it. Sometimes they can do it in recess, and there is a chance over summer recess where you might get them at other times and they might be a bit more available. In terms of councillors, that can work very well, but it's variable the way it has worked. I was talking to the organizer of the event in Malmesbury earlier on, and I was really impressed with the way they've sort of done this. They've engaged with all the councillors on their area board, with all their town councillors in a personal sort of way. They have emailed them, and where they haven't managed to get a response yet, they're trying to find people who actually know them, who can actually talk to them about it, or talk to them in person about it, because just an email and no response, don't stop there. Try and work out. So, and in some cases, some people in WCA can help with that. For example, Andrew knows a lot of the cabinet members and so on. So he's going to give a nudge to one of the people that he knows that hadn't responded, probably just because they're so busy, to the to the email from Malmesbury.
Yeah, I did that today.
Oh, brilliant! And I think that's about it. I'm just checking my notes here. Yeah, I'm really interested to know if anyone is building a relationship with the more difficult to reach ones, who are the ones in Southwest Wilts, Salisbury and East Wilts. So if anyone has any links with those, that would be really helpful.
Okay, thanks, Julian. Useful. Let's move on then. Jackie, you want to unmute?
Hi there. Hope you can hear me. Right. I just wanted to say I was at the meeting today, the climate emergency briefing, and one really heartening thing was that they had a really good take up from villages. They actually had a village where effectively 10% of the population went to the event, because that is quite heartening. Although also involved in WCA, I've also been asked to put on a briefing in our local village for our village and the local surrounding villages, in part to try and start cooperation between villages on resilience and sustainability. So we are working entirely out of our bubble, apart from people we bring in, or there are a few people living in our village who are part of Sustainable Devices. So it's quite a challenge. I'd appreciate any help with facilitation from WCA, but obviously there is a potential for really quite a major impact in that we're not preaching to the converted. We are hopefully reaching people who are concerned but aren't part of an already organised group. So here we go.
Okay, thanks. Margaret, next.
Yes, hi. Just to say, I was at the emergency briefing with Jill yesterday evening. I did speak to Elaine, who's organising that event next Thursday on the 11th, and she did actually ask whether I'd be able to come representing COGS, but I guess it's not out of the question to have a dual hats, especially as I think COGS is a member of the Wiltshire Climate Alliance. So I can probably get along to that one. I don't know quite who's going to be there. It's an interesting experiment to see how invitation only is going to work. She said the MP, this is John Glenn again, had been asked but hadn't replied. So we'll see who's there.
Thanks, then. I wonder if we want to, this is so useful because this seems to be the big thing going on in local and regional climate action currently. Has anyone got any other thoughts? I mean, there was a question of whether the petition is as central as it should be, or too central, because nobody watches live telly anymore. To me, trying to get more people to come along with us and do things with us seems important, because we're so stretched in our movement in Wiltshire. Margaret?
Yeah, just to say, interesting you should say no one watches telly anymore. One of the comments that came out in the course of the discussion after the event yesterday was someone saying that actually it was only lobbying your politicians probably wouldn't get you anywhere, because it was things, if you remember that the series about the post office scandal, Mr. Bates and the post office, it's things like that actually changed people's minds, hearts and minds, not, they'd been lobbying for years through the conventional channels, and it took something like that to actually move things into some action. Well, or further inaction, but anyway.
That's a good point. And I'm probably completely wrong about nobody watches telly anymore. All my neighbours seem to spend all evening watching telly when I look through their windows. And it is important. Vicky's got a hand up.
Bradford on Avon. I couldn't make our showing in the end because I was ill, but I think so. I don't know. I know it kind of changed as you were doing it because of how people were feeling. I know that initially the plan was to be able to provide at the end people with things they could get involved in locally, like actions they could do. But I think that would have been too much by the sounds of it. I think there was so much information that people were taking on. But the other thing, I put it in the chat, but the other thing was that from what I heard, almost half of the audience were not the usual suspects. So I was really pleased with that. And I think, because we held it in a church, and we contacted other organisations as well, like the local schools and different groups. So I think that I felt really positive about that there was a mix, and it was almost half, which is great.
That's true. The only one of our town councillors who came was Katie Vigo, who's also Brian Matthews' assistant. So I think she came wearing that hat. So I don't know about you, but I hope that some of us, and I may have that wrong, Kate. Some of us.
Oh, Kate, you're on mute.
Some of us hope we can run more screenings in the same towns.
Katie Vigar, yes, she is the assistant of Brian Matthew, but she said to me that she was there to represent Bradford Town Council.
Okay.
So she had that hat on at the event.
Yes. What I hope that some towns can do is run more screenings so that we reach out to leaders of community groups, in Bradford and Avon, it would be not just the town council being represented, but the town councillors watching the film themselves personally, and leaders of other community organisations watching their film personally, and then hopefully being encouraged to put on even more screenings. The other thing I wanted to see if anyone wants to react to before we try and round this one up is your thoughts and feelings about the discussion. So I was in a group table. I was very pleased that it was sort of breakouts without having to report back to a plenary in a way. But I noticed that the Aldridge brothers who who produced the film had this very nice sensitive emphasis on people sharing their feelings about perhaps the shocking impact of the film. And I noticed how difficult it is in a little group discussion to help people to focus on their feelings as opposed to jumping forward to their opinions or to solutions and so on. Perhaps especially men who want to talk about it on a very cognitive level. This is what the problem is, and here's how we must solve it. And it's quite difficult. And I heard of another screening somewhere in Wiltshire where there was a structured panel discussion. Here are some extreme weather scenarios. Let's talk about how we might adapt to them. And to me, that must have meant that instead of focusing on our reactions to the film and our emotions in the face of the climate emergency, that we would jump to some sort of solutioneering. But that's just a personal opinion. Has anyone else got thoughts and views on the do's and don'ts of the discussion afterwards, the semi-structured discussion? Any thoughts? Kate?
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Lovely.
it's me again. There's a discussion forum coming up on the 18th of June, Thursday, the 18th of June, in the newly reopened St Margaret's Hall in Bradford-on-Avon. And there are 3 speakers and then plenty of time for Q&A, I hope. And one of the speakers, Rachel Berger, has made a study of resilience. And so she's going to be talking about resilience. And we have an engineer from Wessex Water, and we have a geographer who's going to be talking about how the water lands in our catchment and how it becomes our water bill. I'd love to encourage everyone who can to come to this discussion forum, because I think maybe it's another example, a different example of noticing an audience reaction to news about how things are now and what resilience will involve. I don't know exactly what Rachel's going to say. I've got an outline idea of it. But I think it might be something that we can feed back again about the follow-up of a chain of events. We're all raising awareness. That is the business we're in at the moment, is raising awareness, but also looking for solutions. There isn't a solution. Obviously, the situation is very, very serious. But sharing examples of good practice, herd mentality is an important thing in psychology. So when you find that one village is doing it and they've succeeded, then another village can imitate and hopefully succeed. And the same with towns and cities. So I am a bit of a Pollyanna. I do like to find a positive outcome. And I think that we do need the emotional impact because it's the truth of the climate emergency, but we also need the emotional support of being able to move forwards and not paralyzed by how terrifying it all is.
Thanks, Kate. And maybe we can get a link on that about that event into the chat. Can you just remind us the date for now? I think it's listed under
Thursday,
Great
the
Big Green
18th of
Week.
June,
Thanks.
St Margaret's Hall, and wildwatersfestival.com. You'll find all the details of all the events in there.
And that's a very large hall, and it's free to go in, is it?
Well, on Saturday we have the volunteers groups all turning up to advertise their activities, and that's the first event since it got flooded out. So
Okay,
that's happening this Saturday.
Thanks, and thanks for your point about resilience. And I think when we talk about resilience, it's useful to think about what impacts the climate emergency is likely to have in the near future, and what perhaps it's less likely to have. So in Wiltshire, we're very unlikely, as I understand from Wessex Water, to have failure of water supply in the next decade. We're fairly unlikely to have failure of the food supply chain. We're extremely likely to have heat waves. And so there are some reality checks we'll need. Sorry, Shirley, you've been waiting. Go ahead, Shirley, and unmute.
Just quickly, I endorse what Kate said about looking positively. And I think there was quite a lot in Melksham, on my table anyway, of hope that came from the example in the film and from personal experience of people who'd lived abroad. That was extremely positive. But we couldn't seem to get any purchase on other people taking up the showing of the film. I think they all realised how much work it is. And so everybody vaguely looked round and said, WI, oh, WI. And that was where it was left. So there's a bit more work to do there, probably through the vehicle of the record of what was said. And then, you know, when we pursue that perhaps will go somewhere. I think the positive attitude is the one. Yeah.
Do we need to lower the barriers to organising a screening? I mean, how hard should it be to show a film in a public place and have a chat? But carry on.
I think it depends on your audience and how far you're likely to elicit support. It was a lot of work in Melksham, a lot. And I didn't have to worry about the practical, technical side because Town Council had seen to that, thankfully. Yes.
Congratulations for all that work. Thank you, Shirley. Jeremy.
Yeah, great to hear how well the showings went across the county. A couple of things I wanted to mention. Rather countering the good vibes outcomes that people seem to concentrate on, I feel like perhaps we should actually be more concentrating on some of the really shit-scaring outcomes from that film. Things like, you know, this climate is the best climate we're going to have for the next 500 years. You know, that's the sort of message I feel needs to get round home, really. And this last heat spike we just had, apparently every spring, the last 3 springs have been record-breaking springs in terms of heat. So it's not getting any better. No. You know? And the trend is it's only getting worse. The other thing I want to point out is on the petition website, there's a map of all the constituencies and the percentage of people that have signed the petition. It's really interesting, actually. And Melksham and Devizes are in the top 3 in the country.
Great.
Wow.
Sending that one in fact. So
I could be a bit optimistic on that.
We have to keep that up. I mean, these are interesting issues that we're surfacing, the balance between being scary and being positive. After all, it's called an emergency for a reason, and the briefing is highly necessary for reasons. And one of the things about the climate emergency is unless you act in a very timely way, like this year, last year, 10 years ago, the climate emergency reaches a transitional phase where it's not possible to adapt in any way at all to what will happen to Britain's climate. And that will happen 50 years after it became inevitable. So yes, it is an emergency. Vicky.
Yeah, I think it is definitely about getting a balance, isn't it? Because I think the difficulty with looking at the scary stuff is that people then just hide and don't do anything, freeze, hide, don't know what to do, try and ignore it.
Hiding anyway.
I don't agree.
Sorry, I didn't. Oh, I thought I was on mute.
Love that, Jazz.
One at a time, please.
no, I think it's you need to focus on what you can do and what action you can take and what you can control. Otherwise, you seep into a sea of despair and don't do anything at all.
Thanks,
That is my
Vicky.
view.
Let's make that the last word because it's 8 o'clock. We've given this a good going over. We can put our exchange views on the Wiltshire Climate Alliance WCA members WhatsApp. And if anyone isn't on that, please ask somebody to be put into it. You can, of course, leave if it's too chatty. I'm actually playing for time while I try and remember what's the next item on the agenda. Thank you, everyone who's done all the work, put on a screening, spoken here, very brave, and really, really interesting insights, I thought, and experiences. We wanted to have a short item about Great Big Green Week events. So now's your chance to mention any that you haven't already mentioned, such as that brilliant one that Kate Nottage has mentioned coming up in Bradford and Avon. Kate, please.
Is that me?
Yes.
Sorry, Andrew, you're on mute. Thank you. So I'd like to mention Eco Future Fest, which is on Sunday, the 14th of June, and I will stick a link to it in the chat. So this is at Chippenham Town Council. I'm organising it. I last put one on 3 years ago now. So it's Eco Future Fest because it's all about celebrating our natural world and all things sustainable. But it's Eco Future because I want to create this positive vision of the future. I mean, we've just been talking about, the need for hope and resilience. And I think the greatest way to do that is to bring people together, to show what's happening, but also to find different ways to appeal to them. So to those efforts, at the event, I've got live music. I have wildlife photography displays. I've got a series of talks, including what the local wildlife is like, how to reduce waste, and the heat pump panel, which I mentioned earlier to a few people. We've got a series of workshops. These are all free. There's a couple of family ones, but there's one I'm very interested in myself from the CSE. They're doing a very tiny workshop called Beat the Heat, which is low-cost, practical ways to stay cool in our new scorching normal. We've got a hall full of stalls. So obviously we've got community, environmental groups, organisations, but I've also invited quite a number of local makers and crafters, and this is like a small way I think that we can support very local businesses. And of course it's also being creative, which is something else I want to kind of get people thinking about the future rather than consumerism, about creativity. I've got lots of freebies as well, because that's last time how I attracted people who wouldn't normally come. What does everyone love? Freebies. So we've got free wildflowers, free trees, free refreshments, free samples of plant-based food, lots of free activities, the workshops I mentioned before, and lots of the stalls are doing things. So the beekeeper's stall, they're offering to do candle rolling, and they've got a hive that people can look at, and we've got someone who will be demonstrating how to detect bats. So it's really important, I think, to have lots of activities and, to kind of like make learning fun. So I've just asked the stalls to make certain we're doing something. So I've got a local recycling company, but they're going to be doing this game where you have to throw things into various containers to judge emissions and stuff like that. So it's all about making it very interactive. I've also got free bike checks. I've got a giant eco snakes and ladders, and Manil foyer, which is kind of set out like a cafe, so people can just sit down and chill. I've got a listening post with a water soundscape just to immerse yourself in, and again, lots of games and things to do. So I share the links. If anyone has any questions, let me know.
What an extraordinary... I'm going to move to Chippenham. What an extraordinary set of events.
I was just thinking the same. Can you come and work for us here?
Well, would I still get the same salary? Or a salary?
Absolutely. Treble.
Okay, then.
Is that on the Great Big Green Week map? I can't see it there.
I have uploaded it, but apparently it takes a few days for it to come through.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Okay then. Any other special Great Big Green Week plugs or questions before we move on? Then Joan. Unmute, Joan.
Yes, in Swindon, we are having a number of events that churches are putting on. Some of them are very small things, some of them are bigger, but all under one big umbrella of the church's Green Festival. Yeah, a dozen or more events going on.
Thanks, that's great. We're learning more and more that churches are very active in climate and environment, but for reasons that make a lot of sense when you think about it for a bit. Thank you very much, Joan. All right, Julian.
Yeah, thanks, Joan. And of course, the film that you got on is a David Attenborough film, and I think that makes a really good compliment, doesn't it, to the other film?
Yeah.
You got on mute, Joan.
Our thought was that inviting something that they feel is cozier may get people along who would be put off going to something that they thought would be too challenging.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, we're in the on the WCA. We promoted sort of all the things on the map, and that includes the sort of Churches Green Festival, which is really great. And it also helps where there's individual events set up online for things, and then WCA can share those, and we can sort of point them to other people that we know in the area, and that would be good, for example, for that film, because that's a nice public event that you just want as many local people as probably as possible, don't you, on that? What was I going to say? So has anyone? I mean, one of the ideas from the Climate Coalition, of which we in Bradford and Avon are members, and WCA is sort of partly a member, is to engage MPs to see all the good stuff going on. I just wondered if anyone had any events suitable for engaging MPs, and if they'd had any luck engaging MPs with them. I mean, for example, that David Attenborough film would be a perfect example.
Yeah, we're inviting our councillors. I don't think we planned to invite Danny Kruger.
Right. Yes. Okay. Some of the good news is on the nature stuff. Some of the reform councillors have been quite receptive, so that's why I thought it might be a particularly good idea on that particular event.
I wonder if any MPs who don't want to be seen at screenings, I wonder if there's any chance, does anyone think, of asking them to watch it privately and without publicity with a constituent so that they see it without being seen to have seen it. Does anyone think that's plausible at all? I don't know. Since we're with Brian Matthew, where I live, who's going to watch it as many times as it takes. Just a thought. Shirley.
It just seems to me that, well, in fact, today in the NEB feedback session on how the screenings are going, that lots and lots of people are asking for what's coming next, particularly in relation to young people, and the need for different levels of film for very young children and young people. And so people were clamoring for that. So I fed that back today, because unless you know what's planned, we can come up with all sorts of suggestions and it might already be in their minds. So something like this clandestine briefing could be very useful to feed in to NEB, and that they could, take responsibility for some direct work. We don't all have to be doing it locally. That who are the, they'll know who are the people who might be a bit dubious about being seen at a screening, won't they? It's obvious.
One last thing, we seem to be jumping back to the screenings. I heard that there were some Bristol councillors who were reluctant to go to the screening because they don't like Chris Packham. Has anyone come across that? Did that come across in the national feedback session earlier today?
No.
No, it didn't. Okay, I wondered if we ought to be asking them to make a gluten-free or Packham-free version of the film, especially for the people who don't like Chris Packham. But I'll drop that for now. And we've covered Great Big Green Week.
You got to unmute again, Andrew.
Let's just look forward a little bit more to in the we normally have the Green Open Homes. Now, Wiltshire's Green Open Homes has been technically open for people to try and book visits ever since, was it last September, October, till the end of May. But if we want to relaunch it, and I'm very much aware that Jackie did huge amounts last time, more than your fair share, Jackie. It's coming up to Green Open Homes season, and the one thing that Jackie, was it you who said earlier, was that locally organised clusters of homes around the county work best. Could people help with that? And does anyone want to know what Green Open Homes is for a start? For any reason? I think you probably all are aware, or enough of you are aware. Kate Watson, you know what it is, don't you? So, or if you don't, you're not saying. And,
Yes, I do. Thank you.
yes, that's fine. And I went to some homes. It was very interesting for me to find out that someone was limited on how big their solar panels could be because the electricity distribution network operator wouldn't let them feed that much electricity back into the local grid. So what are we going to do about Green Open Homes? Are we going to try and get builders to come? Are we going to organise local clusters? Let's make it a good one, because after all, I'm a man in a hurry. There's a climate emergency, and enough people are receptive to decarbonising their homes, that this is a very useful activity. We always have, oh, who shall I use? What heat pump shall I get? And so on. It's like people come to me going, what bicycle shall I buy? Because I used to run a bike shop. Jackie, unmute.
I was just delighted to see that Jeremy, Sylvia and Kate are on the call, because they basically in Wiltshire started off Green Open Homes locally. And I think their model is really useful. I think our county-wide effort was really useful as well. But now I think more returning to local recommendation and combining that with energy focus is going to have more an influence now. I've noticed I was involved in both events, and the second event, it was quite clear that although some homes were absolutely excellent, they received no visitors at all. And I felt that was a real shame, and that actually local promotion would have been a lot stronger. So that was my feeling. I still think it's an excellent idea, but to combine it with energy events and local recommendation is a stronger approach. And talking to colleagues in Bath and North East Somerset and Dorset who have both done the same thing, and Oxfordshire have now gone on to the same approach, is that they focus locally. I'm very happy. If you look on the Green Open Home sites, there are 20, I think it's about 23 homes, bless them, who have remained open by personal contact. So at any point, people can email WCA and we can forward a request to visit their home. But equally well, obviously, I also have records of all the people, all the 50 homes who were open during the event. So if you've got local events and you wonder who was open for a previous event, I can, put you in touch with Noble people. But also there will be new homes who've come on, who've had the work done since. So, I really highly recommend that you work on a local approach within your community. I think that's the next stage. Thank you.
Thanks. That's useful. Now, William.
Yeah, just a point. I was at a meeting yesterday and I was reminded that the Warm Homes Plan of the government is bringing a lot more money potentially into this, either as grants or as interest-free or low-interest loans, and that will be coming over the next few months. I'm putting a link to the Warm Homes Plan. It is actually relatively readable for a government document, and it may be something that will be helpful for us to be up to speed with if we're involved with green open homes or similar events.
Okay, is that anything we should we need more information from you about, or just should we watch this space, William?
It's I've just put it into the chat.
Oh, thanks. Great. All right, some more hands up, Shirley, and then Julian.
Sorry, just today I noticed that the what's it called? The National Retrofit Hub, which Jackie put me onto, has got an excellent document telling the government, giving the government its feedback on the Warm Homes Fund, which is the actual money mechanisms. And they've got a very nice summary of what they think needs to be done to make the retrofit sector really take off. Perfectly readable. As I agree with William, the Warm Homes Plan is readable.
Good. Thanks. I just want you to remind me what you're saying we could read. The Warm Homes Grant, there, that link there. Is that the one? Thanks. Julian, then.
Thanks. Yeah. So I just put a link into the chat to the apply for a Warm Homes local grant as well. I mean, it's being rolled out in different phases, different parts of it. Some parts are already available and other parts are coming out later. So it is worth, having a look at that even now. But a lot of it is for lower income households, but it's still something well worth, sharing with people. I was also going to say, I was chatting with William earlier and came out with lots of William was sort of saying lots of really interesting things, and I just wondered if you might be able to remember any more of the things that you were saying, William, because I thought that it was so inspiring, the sort of ways you were thinking about going ahead in the future on on this subject.
Don't know quite what to say to that, but the main thing I think that I've done is I'll be doing a People's Merchantly briefing to the Town Council and our resilience team here in Cricklade next week. And I've been asked, what happens next? And as a result of that, I've done a postcode survey of all the EPC ratings of Cricklade and can see that the poorer houses are unsurprisingly clustered in certain places. And so I'm very keen to try and get some green open homes for people on the street to look at. So a very ultra local form of green open homes. And to look with the council at how we can link those people to the right resources, both in terms of suppliers, grants, and all other things, but doing it in a very, very specific, very localized, door knocking even form of promotion.
That's lovely.
So things like where there's sort of a house that's obviously got some good solar panels on the roof, maybe sort of discussing how they've done it, and obviously trying to find some good suppliers, see if they were happy with their supplier, and might be worth. In Swindon, we once had the situation where one of the people in the street actually got 10 of the other people in the street to do solar just by sort of knocking on their neighbours' doors and saying, look, we're doing this, and would you like to this is how we're doing it, and they may be able to give a slight sort of discount if we all do it together, sort of thing. And that worked really nicely, and we've now got 10 homes instead of one in this particular street in Swindon. Unfortunately, it hasn't been replicated elsewhere yet, but it's something that would be really nice if we can do.
Right. Okay. In a minute, I want to ask Jeremy or Sylvia to expand a bit on something really interesting that you put in the chat. But over to you, Jackie, first.
Just a quickie. Thank you for raising the National Retrofit Hub. I highly recommend that. They have regular, really good webinars with inspiring examples of people doing work in this field from all over the country. And those webinars are recorded as well, so you can go back and look at them. So very, very good stuff. And one of the points I picked up from previous webinar was really encourage your council to use local businesses to do their council retrofit, because otherwise the skills aren't being built within the county. And I think that is something I've mentioned in the meetings with the council, but I think we can really push for that. It shouldn't just be the cheapest supplier. So bless you. I'm over and out now.
Thanks, Jackie. And so, Jeremy, perhaps we seem to be homing in on working with local authorities and working locally in communities, whether it's neighbours or councils. You said in the chat one model would be for a retrofit advisor to sit on a panel with a local authority conservation officer. Would that be at Wiltshire Council level or at Town Council level? Can you say a little more about that?
So Kate and I were at the community energy meeting in Frome yesterday, and this was mentioned in passing by, I think, Bath and West Community Energy, that they'd been running one of a number of different activities that they have been carrying out. And of course, in Bath, there's a huge majority of the houses probably conservation in conservation areas are listed. So it was with local town council conservation officers. I think they're employed by the town council. And it just struck me as a really nice idea. And I think they gave it as an example of the way that they're collaborating with local authorities. And there was also somebody from Frome Town Council who also is on the committee of the local community energy group. So certainly some towns and cities seem to be getting the message that this is a way of building community coherence, of helping make energy more affordable, achieving some of their policy objectives, collaborating with the local climate action or community energy group. But I suppose we don't all have such amenable councils where we live, and parish councils have very limited resources, of course.
It sounds worth trying to do that. So building on green open homes by getting community energy group involved, getting councillors involved, getting perhaps suppliers involved. So hopefully we can have a successful green open homes this session, which would be when? September, October this year? I'm forgetting really. That's the sort of time when we want to get it active. So we will need people to come forward to help energize it and do a certain amount of organizing. So put your name in the chat or be one of the usual suspects and expect for us to contact you. I put in the name of someone who I think has been eager to have his home visited. It's a councillor, and although his name has been handed in, somehow he hasn't got himself plugged into the loop. So that's inspiring, and I hope to visit some green open homes. Since ours isn't one yet, we've had problems with our building works. But fingers crossed on that. Okay, we've covered that well. We've covered everything well, and I particularly appreciated the discussion and reports on the People's Emergency Briefing, but also the huge variety of things that are going on in Chippenham and Bradford and different places around the county. So thanks for telling us about these things this evening. We could draw it to a close, and the next meeting will almost certainly be the first Wednesday of next month, which will be July. Are there any other items of business, any other pieces of news or questions or anything like that? Shirley?
Did anybody go to the Wessex Community Energy Network meeting yesterday? Because it's sort of crept up on everybody.
William, you say you did.
Yes,
okay.
I was there.
Oh,
it was a very good day. Lots of networking quite a bit of very specific information. As was mentioned already, the Bath and West Community Energy, I think she's the chief executive now, Sarah Grimes, spoke quite a bit about retrofit and the conservation order listed property champions that they've got, who are people who have experienced going through the planning system and how to make it work. And Sarah actually sent to me this morning the papers concerning permitted development. And even if you're in a conservation zone, there is an awful lot that you are allowed to do, and you don't need extensive permissions through the planning department. So that was one of the key things, but there was lots and lots going on. It's hard to put it all into a few sentences. Kate.
Yeah, I went as well. I think I came home. I mean, I agree with everything that Jeremy and William have said. The key take-home messages were for me in regards to the context of the Pusey Community Energy workshops that we've been holding with the Centre for Sustainable Energy, is that any project that's going to have more than 5 or more megawatts of power is a no-goer, because there is no room on the grid. But the good news is because the changing to the regulations has happened, that anything below 5 megawatts can now be considered as a local energy network. And that opens up a huge amount of possibilities for houses and schools and churches to share their solar on their roofs with a community-owned battery. And the returns on capital employed for that are very good, about 7.5%, which makes it worth doing. So I'm now pursuing that as part of the outcome of our community energy workshop in November. So I'm busy just recruiting the troops. I've also just heard today that I've received support, online coaching support from Centre for Community Energy Go, which is the solar housing neighbourhood, to help me through the sort of stakeholder recruitment and thinking about the community engagement workshops. And the objective is that I will have a captured community vision for what their community energy project will look like by the 30th of December this year. So I've given myself a reasonable deadline to work to. So that's the news from my end. So I found yesterday's event really brilliant. And in terms of my own learning, it was the small one, well, they're about 300 kilowatt batteries, which are about the size of a vending machine, and just what impact they can have in terms of levelling the load between the community energy network and the grid to provide cheaper, much cheaper electricity to the stakeholders and shareholders in the community energy network. I agree, if the price of electricity goes down, it might change the sums, but it's looking very promising at the moment.
That'll be the day. Thank you. William?
Yes. Sorry, just one other thing which I think is quite important to mention. They were encouraging us as much as possible, if we have any community energy project that we are thinking about, to put in an expression of interest with the help, is it the Future Energy Landscapes? Because if you don't get yourself on the list, then it will make it far harder later on. You don't have to have a mature project in order to put yourself on the list. I probably haven't got all the details correct on that, but that was something they were emphasising yesterday.